At a grand pack gathering, I witnessed the tense confrontation between my former and current mate. Kylie's poisoned hairpin did not hit me, but unfortunately injured an innocent maid, Elise. Now, as the Luna of the Moon River Pack, I must find a suitable punishment for Kylie's actions. Welcome to the Alpha's Love channel. If you enjoy this story, don't forget to subscribe and give it a thumbs up. Chapter 25 Function. Since the inception of the Evergreen Wilds packs, there had been 2 more packs that splintered off from others, resulting in a grand total of 7 packs. The Silver Arrow Pack, the Moon River Pack, the Fireclaw Pack, the Snow Fang Pack, the Willow Creek Pack, the Ocean Gem Pack, and the Night Ridge Pack. As Alpha Aaron, Luna Kylie and Beta Caden entered the event hall, quite a number of leaders from other packs had already arrived. Recognizing some faces from the function his father had him attend the year prior, he approached a few to introduce his Luna. Beta Caden meanwhile, wandered away to the drinks table. Alpha Aaron. Congratulations on your appointment. Alpha Frederick greeted him with a smile, the 2 of them shaking hands. Aaron was in a good spot, for now the Night Ridge Pack was the most newly formed out of the Evergreen Wilds packs, and relied the most on the Silver Arrow Pack. Alpha Frederick, nice to see you again after so long. I hope the Night Ridge Pack is holding up well after the small epidemic you had last year. Alpha Frederick nodded. Fortunately, yes. He guided a beautiful woman in a black dress standing next to him forward. I'm sure you recall my lovely mate, Luna Olivia. Of course. Alpha Aaron dipped his head and shook Luna Olivia's hand as well, before doing the same thing and bringing Luna Kylie forward. It was clear she had been waiting for her first introduction. And this is my own mate, Luna Kylie. Wonderful to meet you, Luna Kylie. Alpha Frederick shook the woman's hand, albeit with a slightly puzzled smile. Though I recall that you had a different woman with you during last year's function. Luna Kylie's smile froze and Alpha Aaron quickly had to come up with something. Yes, I did. He explained, trying to keep his voice calm and measured. But something unfortunate occurred, and as of now she is no longer part of the Silver Arrow Pack. We don't know where she is. Oh, I see. Alpha Frederick did not seem very satisfied with that answer but smiled anyways. Regardless, it's a pleasure to meet you both. Alpha Aaron spent a while chatting with Alpha Frederick on some trivial matters, the latter clearly trying to butter him up for some agreement related to his pack security, while Luna Kylie and Luna Olivia talked themselves. Alpha Frederick and Alpha Aaron. Aaron turned to recognize the Alpha and Luna of the Fireclaw Pack walking over to them, the Luna's belly clearly showing a pregnancy. Alpha Silas, how have you been? Alpha Frederick shook his hand before Aaron did the same. I've been doing well. Alpha Silas responded warmly, taking his mate's hand and guiding her alongside him. Pack operations are going smoothly. So most recently, I've been focusing on growing my family with Luna Quinn. Congratulations to both of you. Luna Olivia exclaimed, genuinely happy for both of them, as she lightly embraced Quinn. The 2 women seemed to be on rather good terms. Yes, congratulations to you both. You deserve happiness. Alpha Aaron said, when Kylie interrupted behind him. Yes, perhaps it is a great match if the Alpha wishes to have many children. Alpha Silas raised an eyebrow at Luna Kylie, with a skeptical and curious expression on his face. I beg your pardon. Luna Quinn is an Omega, is she not? Luna Kylie asked, smiling ignorantly. That's why you mated with her, to produce an heir and then some. An awkward silence fell upon the group before Alpha Silas spoke with a disbelieving chuckle. Luna Kylie, I'm not sure what you've heard about me and my Luna, but I can assure you that Luna Quinn is indeed my fated mate. Ah? Kylie nodded. Well, good job at making the best out of what the moon goddess gave you. Even Alpha Frederick was speechless at this point, and he hurried away to join another leader in conversation. Luna Olivia, who still had a protective arm around Luna丨, gave Kylie a barely concealed glare before leading the latter further away to sit down. Quinn herself was just in disbelief and confused by what had just occurred, her eyes darting to the ground. Alpha Silas was still smiling, but this time the grin did not quite reach his eyes. "I didn't settle for my mate if that's what you're implying," he replied, shooting that same warning smile at Alpha Aaron, who had the sense to feel some amount of second-hand embarrassment. "Now if you excuse me, I have things to attend to." He turned and strode away, sitting next to his Luna at that table and clasping her hands in a show of comfort and support. "You should have held your tongue. I told you that Silas really cares for his mate." Alpha Aaron whispered to Luna Kylie, still trying to look cheerful for appearances. "I was just stating the facts," Luna Kylie replied with an innocent smile. Months ago that smile would have melted Aaron like a popsicle in the hot summer, but now it did nothing. Why else would such a capable alpha accept an omega for his mate? "Just don't make assumptions, all right?" Aaron muttered, unsure of what to tell Kylie at this point. He didn't recall her being this blatant about her opinions. Perhaps she'd only started becoming like this after she became the Luna of the Silver Arrow Pack. Luna Kylie headed off to chat with someone else, while Alpha Aaron accepted a small glass of champagne from a server. As he sipped the drink, his eyes fell upon Silas and Quinn once again. The woman was leaning her head on Silas's shoulder with a smile, and the Alpha's hand was gently resting upon her belly. Sooner or later, Aaron would have to try for an heir to the Silver Arrow Pack. But as much as he tried to picture himself starting a family with Kylie, it was difficult. Being intimate with Kylie was still an issue that needed solving thanks to his wolf, and now that he thought about it, he wasn't sure if she would make the best mother. If an adult pack member could make her lose her composure so easily, what about a young child crying for milk? "You could have had that with Olwen." Oz growled ruefully, as Aaron continued to watch Silas and Quinn. "And risk weakening the pack. There's a reason the Fire Claw pack isn't the strongest. You still think it's solely because their Luna is an omega." His wolf scoffed. "You're no better than Kylie, you just knew to keep your mouth shut." Aaron frowned and sipped his champagne again, but he couldn't help imagining it. Olwen, his mate and Luna, and children that were the perfect combination of their features. They could have been happy. He then blinked and suppressed that thought. "I've made my decision," he reminded himself, as he walked towards Kylie, who was conversing with Luna Tegan of the Willow Creek Pack on something related to fashion. As Tegan walked away, Aaron placed an hand on Kylie's hip. "How are you enjoying the new atmosphere, baby doll?" he murmured into her ear, and was pleased to see her shiver slightly. "The Moon River Pack have done a better job hosting this function than I thought," Kylie replied, nodding to the decorations, the way the place was set up, and the soft music as the other leaders milled around and socialized before dinner was to start. "Also, I overheard some hearsay from the kitchens. Apparently, Alpha Landon recently found himself a Luna." Aaron raised an eyebrow curiously at this piece of information. He hadn't interacted much with Alpha Landon, the last time being at the function last year, where he spoke with Olwen. However, as the only alpha in the Evergreen Wilds who did not have a Luna, this was interesting news. Why didn't anyone hear of this sooner? Kylie shrugged, sipping at her own glass. "I'm not sure. The kitchen staff didn't mention her by name either, only that she's rather beautiful, and immediately captured Alpha Landon's heart. They also talked about all the support and contributions she's made to the Moon River Pack in recent times, including to the function itself." The function. It made sense for the mysterious new Luna to have been responsible for helping to put together this major event, though from the sound of things her appointment had only just happened recently. "I suppose we'll get a chance to find out who she is later," Alpha Aaron said, kissing Kylie's cheek and making her giggle. The sound made something in his stomach turn, but he tried to ignore it. "Thank you for informing me this, Kylie. Maybe this night wouldn't be so bad after all. If Aaron could just take care of most of the socializing and Kylie stuck to topics she knew. If it isn't the newly established Alpha and Luna of the Silver Arrow Pack. Aaron stiffened briefly before he recognized the couple heading over to him and Kylie. Alpha Maxwell and Luna Yvonne of the Snow Fang Pack. Hello again. He bowed lightly to the two of them, already getting the feeling that they weren't here to exchange simple pleasantries. The pair made no attempt to shake their hands, both gazes moving from Alpha Aaron to Luna Kylie. Nice to see you again, Kylie. Luna Yvonne smiled at her, but there was no warmth in it. Though I wasn't expecting our next meeting to be under such circumstances. Me neither. The normally confident Kylie was floundering a little beneath the ironically scorching gazes of the leaders of the Snow Fang Pack, her eyes dropping to the floor. So, Alpha Maxwell said, looking at Kylie as if he was about to reprimand a child. You reject Oliver without a single explanation as to why, and months later turn up here, at the function, as the Silver Arrow Pack's Luna. I'm impressed you still dared to show your face, Miss Paxton. Kylie swelled and didn't answer, and Alpha Aaron was obliged to speak up for his mate. Alpha Maxwell, let's not make a scene. This is supposed to be a sociable, light-hearted event for the pack leaders after all. He said, putting an arm around Luna Kylie's shoulders. He gave the older Alpha a glare, reminding him who exactly was leading the strongest pack in the forest. After a moment, Alpha Maxwell took a step back, but his gaze towards Kylie was still no less frosty. Very well. Let us hope that the new Luna of the Moon River Pack will be a welcome change. He and his wife turned and walked off to their seats. Are you all right? Aaron looked to his mate in concern. Kylie managed a smile as Maxwell and Yvonne headed away. Yes. I'm sure I'll be fine. This is the first time they've seen me since I left the Snow Fang Pack. Aaron gently tucked a strand of hair behind Kylie's ear, despite the turmoil his inner self was having. They had to present a united front, after all. They stayed standing for a while, talking with the other Alphas and Lunas that they had not angered in an attempt to salvage the already unraveling situation. Unfortunately, they were wholly unprepared for just how much further things would crumble. Presenting, the beater of the Moon River Pack and his mate. As the leaders lightly applauded, Alpha Aaron wondered why such an announcement was being made for Landon's second in command. And then the couple themselves walked into the event hall. Beater Elijah and Stella Atwood. There was the distinct noise of Kylie choking on her drink. Elijah looked just as Aaron recalled, dressed in a suit and blue tie. He had cuff links with similarly blue accents, and a single crescent moon earring. But then there was his mate, and it was no doubt that it was the Saint Stella, who had been in line to become Aaron's beater, before she'd exposed the truth of his and Kyla's relationship, and abandoned the Silver Arrow Pack with her brother and mother. Sections of Stella's dark hair were weaved into a braid behind, as she practically glided across the polished floor in an off-shoulder dress the color of the galaxy. Small stars glittered on the bodice and skirt, constellations shining faintly on the translucent sleeves. Stella herself was linking arms with Beater Elijah, waving at and greeting all the people who gathered around them both. When she finally came to Alpha Aaron and Luna Kylie, her smile was almost mocking with the amount of genuine joy it contained. Alpha Aaron, Luna Kylie, long time no see. Stella. Aaron said, staring at Stella with an absolutely dumbfounded expression on his face. Even as the beater's daughter, she'd never dressed or acted like this in the Silver Arrow Pack. There were so many questions he wanted the answer to, but he couldn't cause a commotion in front of all the other leaders. Yes? Stella nodded her head. Oh, and this is my mate, Beater Elijah. Although if I'm not wrong, you might have met him before. Alpha Aaron, Luna Kylie. Her mate dipped her head at both him and Luna Kylie, who seemed rather incredulous. You seriously cannot be mated to another beater? Kylie accused, eyeing up both Elijah and Stella with suspicion. Considering you left the Silver Arrow Pack when you were training to become one, perhaps you coerced. Kylie, not now. Alpha Aaron hissed to her, but the damage was done as Elijah had taken 2 quick strides and gotten all into her space. Never mind the fact that she was supposed to be Luna of the Silver Arrow Pack, there was no way Elijah would take it quietly if she insulted his mate. Don't you dare talk like that about my partner. Elijah growled, glaring at Kylie. His eyes shifted to Ellis's ivy green. I'm not the one who dishonored the moon goddess and slept with someone else's mate. Eyes darting around the room and quickly noticing some of the attendees were watching the exchange, Alpha Aaron tightened his grip on Kylie's arm and awkwardly stepped in between her and Elijah. Apologies, Luna. Kylie is not herself today, he said, trying his absolute best to retain his polite smile. But I heard that the Moon River Pack has finally managed to find themselves a new Luna. What's that all about? Stella stepped forward to calm her own husband with a hand on his shoulder, keeping her eyes fixated on Aaron and a still rather angry Kylie behind him. She's quite something, I'll say. But I believe Alpha Landon will want to introduce her himself in due time. She replied cryptically, not really answering Aaron's question. Her eyes flickered behind Aaron, spotting her father staring at her with wide eyes and looking a bit like a kicked puppy. Now if you excuse us, Beta, Elijah and I need to go chat with the other guests. Have a good evening, though. The couple swept away in the opposite direction. Why that? Kylie seethed, and she looked as if she wanted to shift and lunge at her former pack mate. Kylie, not in front of all the guests. Aaron warned her, and the woman begrudgingly fell silent. He decided it was the best time to go and find their table. All the guests had arrived by now, and Alpha Landon had just emerged on the balcony above the dining room. His suit was a deep blue with a crescent moon pinned to his lapel, with embroidered patterns from his left shoulder. He began to speak into a microphone just as Aaron and Kylie sat down. Good evening to you all, and welcome to this year's Evergreen Packs function. First and foremost, I would love to thank the Silver Arrow for entrusting such an important event to our hosting this year. We can only hope that we've done it justice. There was a smattering of respectful applause for the leaders of the Silver Arrow Pack, Aaron glancing over to see Beta Caden still staring at the table where his daughter and her mate were, and Luna Kylie straightening herself and trying to look dignified despite her actions thus far indicating otherwise. This could not get any worse. Before we begin this year's event, Alpha Landon spoke, his voice ringing out calmly through the hall. I would like to make a formal announcement. Normally, the Alpha would give the speech kickstarting the annual function, but this year I would like to give the opportunity to my new Luna. Murmurs of excitement, curiosity and speculation drifted through the leaders below. Even Beta Caden, who had been preoccupied staring after Stella, perked up at this news. Her Luna ceremony was held just last week, so I thought it would be better to formally announce her tonight. Alpha Landon continued. His gaze swept over everyone, stopping at Aaron and Kylie in particular. Though she has been part of the Moon River Pack for a short time in comparison to myself, she has been nothing short of wonderful. Her presence has become a source of encouragement, comfort and strength for not just myself, but her fellow pack members. The members of the Moon River Pack, not just the higher-ups, but the waiting staff, the chefs in the kitchen, the attendants helping out around the hall, all stopped to applaud their Alpha at this. Aaron observed the atmosphere and felt surprisingly impressed. Whoever this new Luna was, she was well loved. After my fated mate rejected me years before, I never thought I would find someone else. And yet I did. Alpha Landon continued, his blue eyes filled with adoration. I thank the moon goddess for bringing her my way and letting her be a part of my life. He glanced behind him with a warm smile on his face, before he turned back to the audience below him. And now, without further ado, I would like to introduce my mate. He stepped aside, and a radiant figure in a light blue dress emerged from behind him. The moment her grey eyes met Aaron's, he felt all the colour drain from his face. "Ladies and gentlemen, I give you all Luna Cartwright of the Moon River Pack." Chapter 26 Function continued. Luna saw the stunned look on Aaron's face. Given the last time she'd seen him was when she broke their mate bond and went into exile, she had braced for some kind of yearning, some kind of bitterness at what could have been. But she felt nothing. Her eyes swept briefly over his face before she addressed the attendees as a whole. "Leaders of the Evergreen Wilds packs, it is my pleasure to welcome you to this year's function." Her voice resonated loud and clear through the room, and the audience quieted down to listen. She could see that some recognized her from the previous year's event. "Though I have only been Luna of the Moon River Pack for a brief time, I have lived here all my life, and bore witness to many happenings, went through many experiences, that shaped who all of us are as a region today." She continued, keeping her voice level. "Though we may have separate lives, there are still many threads that tie all of our packs together in different ways. It is precisely why the packs chose to make peace all those years ago, and why we continue to promote cooperation and teamwork amongst us leaders until today." She was secretly pleased to see some of the alphas, Lunas and betas nodding along in silent agreement of what she was saying. "And it is with those very aims that this function takes place today," Olwen concluded. "We are here not just to update one another on ongoing events in our packs, but to also strengthen our ties and foster closer relationships. Because when it all comes down to it, we are all part of the Evergreen Wilds, and we need to work together in order to continue to prosper. Remember to keep that in mind going forward, tonight and as long as we live." She stepped back and dipped her head to signify she was done with her speech, and loud applause came up from the crowd below. She could see Beta, Elijah and Stella, along with some of her own pack members, who were helping out with the function, clapping for her as well, and smiled gratefully at them. "So how did I do?" Luna whispered to her mate, as Alpha Landon took her arm in his and they gradually descended the steps together. "Wonderfully." He smiled at her. "You're a natural at this." Olwen laughed in response, finding herself oddly relaxed, though she knew almost every pair of eyes in the room was on them at the moment. "I wouldn't say I'm a natural. I did have training before I came to the Moon River Pack after all." "Alpha Landon, it is a pleasure to be able to speak with you again." Alpha Maxwell bowed lightly to him and shook his hand with a smile. He was more at ease with Landon, as they had cooperated on multiple occasions, and also spent time together outside of pack-related matters. They could almost be considered friends. "It is good to see you too, Alpha Maxwell." Landon returned the gesture with a smile before Maxwell turned to Olwen. "And Luna Olwen. It is an honor to see you again." Olwen smiled as they shook hands. "You too, Alpha Maxwell." They'd conversed a little back in the previous year's function, when Olwen asked about Kyla's welfare in the Snowfang pack. If only she'd known. "Believe me, it is a relief to meet a welcoming face after certain unsavory characters." Luna Vaughn shook her hand as well, casting an over-shoulder glance back at the leaders of the Silver Arrow pack. Olwen could tell both Aaron and Kylie were eyeing her especially, but elected to ignore them for now. As Landon and Maxwell engaged in a riveting conversation about the latest developments in the soccer league, Olwen and Yvonne initiated their own discussion. "I'm sure it hasn't escaped most people's attention tonight that a year ago, you were the Luna丨of the Silver Arrow pack." Yvonne spoke. She had no malice in her tone, it was a straightforward observation. "Everyone is curious as to what happened between you and Alpha Aaron." "I understand." Olwen responded with a calm smile. As much as she knew Opal wanted to lunge across the room and rip the man they'd once loved to shreds, and did Olwen want to let her, she was now the Luna of the Moon River pack. Her response had to be more dignified. "The truth is somewhat more complex, but I can sum it up. Alpha Aaron didn't think I was suited to become Luna of the Silver Arrow Pack, and when I refused to give up my position willingly I became a rogue. She explained, watching Luna Vaughn for her reaction. By pure fortune, I came upon the Moon River Pack several months later. I was honestly just happy to find another pack that accepted me as one of their own, but Alpha Landon and I eventually fell in love and well, here I am. The other woman looked surprised at the story, and her eyes flickered to the woman somewhere behind Olwen. And Alpha Aaron thought that would make a more capable Luna than you. I suppose. Olwen replied simply. Alpha Vaughn let out a disappointed huff. What a pity. When I met you last, I was glad to believe that the Silver Arrow would be in good hands after Luna Tess passed on. Who knew things would change so quickly? It's quite all right, Luna Vaughn. I'm just glad I got the chance to speak with you once more. Olwen assured her, earning herself a look of admiration. Despite some skeptical and curious looks regarding how Olwen was now the Luna of the Moon River Pack, she was able to put everyone's minds at ease with her serene and pleasant persona. It helped that she recognized most if not all of the attendees, having done her research and recalling their interactions during the last function. She remembered that Alpha Silas had been trying for a child with Luna Quinn and congratulated the pair, the latter comforted and happy to meet another Omega, who had become mates with an Alpha. She also knew of Luna Tegan's desire to cheer up her currently bedridden younger sister, and discussed the possibility of encouraging her to pick up a new crafting hobby. Alpha Landon, while being with her for most of it, didn't need to offer much assistance in building relationships with the others. I think a lot of the leaders like you. Landon murmured to her, giving her waist a small squeeze. Olwen blushed heavily as she felt certain stares on her. For the right reasons, I hope. The light blue dress Elise had designed for her new Luna was sleeveless, beginning with a rhinestone-studded bustier that led down to a satin and tulle skirt. A slit in the dress stopped in the middle of her upper thigh, just enough to keep it more regal and less revealing. This was accompanied by silver-studded earrings and the moon pendant that Landon had given her around her neck. To put it briefly, Olwen may as well have been the reincarnation of the moon goddess herself from the way she looked. Landon glanced around, seeing a few alphas and betas eyeing his mate the wrong way, and sending them glowers that had the men quickly looking in the opposite directions. He turned back to Luna Olwen with a chuckle. Can it be helped that my mate is the brightest star at this event? But don't worry. He pulled her close with a protective and affectionate murmur. Only I should get to look at you like that. I'm flattered that you chose me to become your new fated mate. Olwen felt Opal purring within her and smiled at her alpha. If the moon goddess had indeed told her the truth, then she was fortunate that she had chosen Landon long before she truly embraced her feelings for him. She had told Landon about the dream immediately after coming to, and a week later, he was still having trouble believing that it was a possibility, while being thankful for it. His hand remained around her hip as they walked throughout the room. After talking to all the other alphas, Lunas and betas, Alpha Landon and Luna Olwen, having saved the best for last, walked right over to the Silver Arrow Pack leaders, whom had been seated at their table still and were either distracting themselves with conversation or staring into their wineglasses. Once he saw them approach, Alpha Aaron shot up from his chair a tad bit too quickly, making Luna Kylie shoot him a funny look. Alpha Aaron. Landon bowed to the man, hiding the boiling rage he was experiencing. This is the man who hurt our mate. Lark growled, as Landon's eyes noticed the marks on the couple's necks. Nevertheless, he looked back up at Aaron and Kylie and smiled. He wanted to thank them. As selfish as it was for him to think in such a way, if not for what they did, he might never have gotten a chance with Olwen, and he may not have finally taken a mate and Luna by now. But he held his tongue. And I suppose this is your new Luna. It's a pleasure to meet you, Luna Kylie. Likewise, Alpha Landon. Kylie smiled widely at him as they shook hands. She looked torn between trying to make a good first impression on the leader of the second most powerful pack in the wilds, and attacking the Luna, who was standing right next to him. Once again, our gratitude to you for allowing the Moon River Pack to host the function this year, Landon said, both him and Allwent bowing to them. Alpha Aaron and Luna Kylie looked dumbfounded and somewhat self-conscious in response. Was this show of thanks genuine, or some kind of mockery? It's no problem. Alpha Aaron responded after a while, trying to keep his voice from shaking. He could see Landon and Allwyn's marks as well, as clear as day. Even though they were no longer mates, ours was stirring slightly at Allwyn's scent, and it did not help that the latter looked positively breathtaking. I trust both of you are somewhat familiar with my mate and Luna. While Landon wasn't going to openly rub it in Aaron's face, he did stress on the words mate and Luna. Alpha Aaron, Luna Kylie. Allwyn moved forward and bowed gracefully. Good to see both of you again. Luna Allwyn. Aaron managed to get out, grasping her hand with a shell-shocked expression. Allwyn beamed at him, as if she was completely ignorant of the effect she was having, shaking his hand and then releasing it. Ours whined as she let go. Allwyn then did the same to Kylie, who eyed the hand warily for a heartbeat before accepting and shaking it as well. It's nice to officially meet another new Luna Allwyn. Kylie was practically struggling to refer to the other as such, her face reddening. Luna Allwyn also greeted and shook hands with Beta Caden, who met her eyes for a brief heartbeat, and then looked away in shame. Allwyn briefly observed that despite his well-kept appearance, the Beta had faint circles under his eyes, just fairly hidden by makeup. Her gaze darted to Stella, who was talking with another Luna, and then back to the group in front of her. She wasn't going to interfere. Whether the she-wolf wanted to talk with her father or not was her choice. How? Kylie sputtered out, and Aaron shot her another warning expression in case she was about to accuse another former packmate of seducing an important figure. I met with Allwyn when she came by the Moon River Pack borders, and offered her a place with us. Alpha Landon responded, trying not to make his smile too smug. He could tell that things between Aaron and his chosen mate weren't exactly smooth sailing from the way they'd discreetly interacted throughout the event. After some time, our relationship developed further, and I asked her to be my mate and Luna. I see. Alpha Aaron said stupidly. Landon was standing incredibly close to Allwyn, and as Aaron's eyes fell upon the way the other Alpha's hand was grasping her waist, ours whined again. Something turned in Aaron's stomach. He wanted to pry that hand off. Since we are now all here, we should leave the past behind us. Luna Allwyn spoke. She sounded so calm and regal, and Aaron wondered why he hadn't recognized those qualities in her voice before. As Luna of the Moon River Pack, I hope we can work together in the future without our history getting in the way. Aaron opened his mouth to say something, but nothing could come out. A million thoughts were flying around in his head, and the pain from his wolf only added to his uncomfortable state. Seeing they weren't going to get a reply from either Aaron or Kylie, Landon and Allwyn glanced at one another before Allwyn spoke. We shall give you two some time to think over things. Enjoy the rest of the function. The couple had only walked a couple steps when Aaron snapped out of his stupor. Allwyn wait dash. He moved forward a couple steps and grabbed the Luna's wrist. Instinctively, Landon spun around and let out a low growl, his eyes changing to lark's yellow. Aaron. Kylie's voice came from somewhere behind him, but the man wasn't hearing her, or the quieting of the rest of the leaders in the room, as they observed the spectacle unfolding in front of them. Aaron growled back at Landon, but his attention was quickly taken as Allwyn turned around to face him. Even now, her motions were as graceful as ever. Yes, Alpha Aaron? She asked. The man searched her grey eyes, his own green orbs taking on some form of desperation. Are we really not going to talk about what happened between us? He asked, his voice barely coming out as a whisper. Alpha Landon let out another low snarl, and looked about ready to fight his mate's ex-boyfriend, when Olwen placed a hand on his shoulder and caused him to relax. He glanced at her and nodded before taking a few steps back, though he still watched them. She then looked at Aaron with an unreadable expression, and a long moment had passed before her soft pink lips curled up warmly. "Alpha Aaron, I told you that there is nothing more to address. But since you asked, I did want to tell you this before the end of the function." She held both his hands, and for a moment, the Alpha's heart fluttered. "I wanted to thank you for having the affair with Luna丨. Everything around Aaron plummeted instantly. "What? By getting me to reject you and leave the Silver Arrow pack, I was able to discover more strength within myself than ever thought possible." Luna丨continued in that sweet, gentle tone. "I was able to establish my identity in a new pack, surrounded by members who support me and find my own happiness." She looked back at Alpha Landon with a fond expression. "I can't remember the last time I experienced such peace." Alpha Aaron was absolutely taken aback, as Luna丨 then closed her hands around his encouragingly. "So thank you, Alpha Aaron, for everything. I wish all the happiness in the world for you and Luna丨. May the Silver Arrow pack flourish under your rule." She then released her grip, and returned to Alpha Landon's side. The couple didn't give Aaron a second glance as Landon kissed his mate on the cheek, and they headed away. Aaron was left staring at Luna丨's back profile, barely registering the whispers and gossiping happening around him at that moment. Every word from the she-wolf's mouth had been like a knife cutting through his skin. "You deserve this," Oz snarled, his own tone dripping with bitterness at having to see their former mate with another. "You gave her up. Aaron. Aaron." Kylie hurried up to her chosen mate, causing him to blink and refocus his thoughts on the present. He'd forgotten she was there for a minute. Aaron couldn't figure out what words to say that described how he felt. A part of his brain was still trying to focus on how stunning Kylie was. Her auburn hair was curled and swept over one shoulder, and she was wearing a mermaid dress covered in silver sequins. But then the rest of his brain then reminded him of how superficial, passive-aggressive, and ignorant his chosen mate had been most of the night as well. Even excluding their personalities, Kylie was nothing compared to丨. "The mate you betrayed." Aaron felt Kylie's hand on his shoulder and shrugged it off, as if it was infected. I need some time alone," he muttered, stumbling off through the other guests. Luna丨was left standing by herself, still hearing some of the others' words floating by. Rejected their fated mates for each other, kicked丨out of the Silver Arrow pack. Disgrace to Alphas and Lunas. Her face reddened with indignation, and she glared at the general directions in which the murmurs were coming from a few of the beaters, who fell silent and hurried away. No, her heart pounded as she surveyed the rest of the room. Frederick and Olivia avoided her gaze awkwardly at one table. Silas placed his arms protectively around Quinn at another, and Maxwell and Yvonne clearly teased at her before turning away as well. Stella was off to one side with Beta Elijah, no doubt having witnessed the interaction between Aaron and丨as well. She shot Kylie a pointed look before whispering something to her mate. As the humiliation she and Aaron had just suffered began to sink in, Kylie felt the fury rise. This was supposed to be my night. I was supposed to be the center of attention.丨can't be the Luna of the Moon River pack. She can't be happy with another alpha. Her eyes briefly flashed to that of her wolf Kira before Kylie spun on her heels and stormed off in the opposite direction. Chapter 27 Function Interlude. Halfway through the event, the tables and chairs were shifted aside to make room for a dance floor. Landon smiled widely at丨and held out a hand. Aaron and Kylie were nowhere in sight by now, and he wanted to make use of this reprieve as much as possible. May I have this dance, Luna丨?丨grinned back and accepted her mate's hand with a small bow. I would love to dance with you, Alpha Landon. A group of the most talented pack musicians played a soft jazzy piece, as Landon and Olwen joined a couple of other waltzing pairs. Olwen gently placed a hand on Landon's shoulder, both his hands grasping her hips as they moved as one. Dancing was something that Lunas were expected to do at events, and as such it had been one of the few hobbies Olwen had managed to retain and hone even back at the Silver Arrow pack. And now, it did her favors. With the gracefulness of a swan, Luna Olwen twirled and swayed with her mate Alpha. Landon was not a bad dance partner himself. They'd had frequent practice before the function, but were able to make their movements more fluid and almost natural. It attracted the attention of most onlookers in the hall, including the other dancing couples on the floor. And when Alpha Landon took Luna Olwen's waist and delicately lifted her off the ground, spinning her effortlessly before lowering her back down with the same care, there was an audible collective gasp from around them. For someone who doesn't really like dancing a lot, you're doing a good job at it. Olwen commented softly as she circled him, Landon turning then to grasp her waist once more before they swayed together. He flushed slightly in response. It helps that I have a talented dancer for a mate. His smile turned into a smirk. I wouldn't mind seeing more of that in private. Olwen emitted a mock scandalized gasp before smacking him lightly in the shoulder, making him laugh. Don't say things like that out here. We are supposed to be dignified. Perhaps, but when it all comes down to it, we are still two newly mated wolves. Landon grinned at her, holding and moving her down into a smooth dip, Olwen's brown hair rippling behind her like a beautiful wave. Her hands subconsciously grasped tighter around Landon's shoulders, but as she stared into his blue eyes she knew for certain he wouldn't drop her. He brought her back up and closer to him, Olwen resting her head on his shoulder as they danced. So how is your first pack function as Luna of the Moon River pack? He murmured into her ear. Olwen smiled and gave a soft nod. I could get used to it. Neither of them mentioned anything of it, but her talk with Aaron earlier, where she expressed gratitude for his unfaithfulness towards her, was probably the thing she was most proud of in her life up until that point. And Kyla's face, Olwen couldn't help cracking a smile at the memory. Kylie hadn't stolen anything from her technically, what she had actually done was pick up Olwen's trash. If Aaron had been more loyal and accepting of Olwen, then he wouldn't have cheated on her, and if Alpha Bradley had been a good leader, he wouldn't have threatened exile on Olwen just to cover up for his son. Had she stayed and become Luna of the Silver Arrow pack, Olwen most likely wouldn't be as well respected or loved as she was as Luna of the Moon River pack. Her heart warmed some more at the thought of her current home. She had a new fated mate, against all odds, that truly loved and cared for her, and pack members that admired her despite her Omega status. And the best parts of her old life, Stella and her family, had come over to become part of her new life as well. Out of the corner of her eye, Olwen could see Beta Elijah and Stella dancing together. The two were swaying around, not as experienced as their Alpha and Luna in dancing, but also deep in discussion, most likely regarding another book. The way they gazed at each other, full of happiness and love despite most likely disagreeing on their perspectives of the topic at hand, was all Olwen had wanted to see on her friends' faces. And Cale, who was far more comfortable in his own skin and at ease with socializing with his new packmates, was gradually getting used to his new life as an integral part of the Moon River pack, as well as Gamma Josh's mate. Cale had also gone a ways to help set up the more technical parts of the function under Olwen's supervision, and he'd done a good job. The pair were taking it slow still, but both had confided in her on separate occasions that they were considering taking their bond further and marking each other. Everything came back to Alpha Landon Cartwright. He didn't share the same narrow-minded viewpoints Bradley or Alpha Aaron did. He acknowledged his own mistakes and low points, and appreciated and accepted her for who she was. If he hadn't offered her a place in his pack, she would still have been out in the wilds fending for herself by now. "You're amazing." Olwen found herself murmuring to her mate, his response a raised eyebrow of surprise and a small smile. "Thank you, I guess." Stella stepped out of the room and onto the balcony, the night air caressing her face. After deliberating with Elijah on what could have made the I Am No. 4 movie a stronger adaptation of the books, she wanted to relax. Her mate was currently catching up with the beater from the Fireclaw pack. She slowly inhaled and then exhaled with a small smile on her face. She had never been to the Evergreen function until now, but she figured no subsequent holding of the event would match up to this one. Stella. The smile dropped from her lips, and she let out a quiet sigh of frustration. She schooled her face into a neutral expression as she turned around to greet her father. Beater Caden. To put it lightly, Beater Caden did not look in the best shape. He was less able to disguise his emotions in front of his daughter, stunned, relieved and in parts ashamed, as they stood facing each other, after having not been together for months. "It's been a while," Caden said, his voice quiet, almost tender. "Millimeter," Stella responded, her eyes flickering all over her father's form. "It has." As much as a part of her wanted to tell him all that had happened since she and her mother and brother had departed from the Silver Arrow pack, she wasn't sure if she could entrust him with that information after all that had happened. "You found your mate," Caden said. "He's the beater of the Moon River pack." "Yes." The man nodded slowly. "I've met Beater Elijah a few times. He seems like a nice man. I don't need your approval, you know." Caden visibly flinched at Stella's words, and she briefly felt guilty but didn't show it. "I know you don't." A long silence dragged out between the two of them. "Kale and Sylvie, are they here? Are they safe?" "Yes," Stella said sharply, watching her father's shoulders sag with relief at her answer before she continued on. "But whether or not they'd want to see you is another question." "Stella, why didn't you tell anyone about the truth regarding Alpha Aaron and his choice of mate?" the she-wolf asked Beater Caden, her voice cold and disappointed. "Olwen only had us after her parents' passing. We were supposed to be her second family." I wasn't thinking straight," Caden said, his eyes darting to the floor to avoid looking at his daughter's face. "I've known Bradley since we were kids and he appointed me his beater. After following him through everything, even the rogue attacks, I trusted he was making the right decision. He basically forced Olwen to leave the Silver Arrow pack because her sorry excuse for a fated mate cheated on her," Stella stated, the frustration and anger seeping even more into her voice. "And he allowed his son's mistress to take Olwen's position instead. How on earth did you try to justify that?" "You're right. I couldn't justify that, but I didn't want to come into conflict with the Alpha. You're very fortunate that Olwen is all right, otherwise I would never have wanted to speak to you again," Stella responded, fixing her gaze on Beater Caden's slumped posture. "She's stronger than anyone in the Silver Arrow pack gave her credit for. Even you." Besides, from the look of things, is Luna丨really a better leader for a pack than Luna Olwen?" Stella snorted, disgust flickering through her face. This is her first time at a pack function, and she's managed to cross at least half the leaders of the pack in a span of a few hours. "I knew she was going to be a difficult leader to get along with, but what she did tonight was a whole new low. Has she even done anything remotely decent for the Silver Arrow pack after becoming Luna?" Caden opened his mouth, but nothing came out before he shook his head. "Stella, please believe me when I say how sorry I am for choosing to keep Bradley's secret," he pleaded, taking a step forward. "The moment you left the pack with your brother and mother, I regretted what I did. The Silver Arrow pack hasn't been the same after you left. The Silver Arrow pack hasn't been the same for a long time." Stella interrupted firmly. "How can you not see that? Have you just become so comfortable with being the beater of a so-called invincible alpha and pack that you'll turn a blind eye to anything questionable?" She saw something in her father's eyes and knew she had hit the nail on the head. "Stella, please. I'll do anything to win back my mate and children. Is that so? Stella crossed her arms. Fine then, leave the Silver Arrow pack. Beta Caden stiffened, taken aback by his daughter's demand. What? You heard me. Stella's words left no room for argument. Leave the Silver Arrow pack, and I'll talk to Kale and Mom. But Caden stammered, his eyes flickering all over the place. I'm the beater of the pack. I can't just I know a disaster on the verge of occurring when I see one. Stella scoffed. I left because I knew I wouldn't be able to have a say in anything the Alpha and Luna decided, and it's obvious that most of the choices they have and will go on to make are wrong. That's true, but I've given my life to the Silver Arrow pack. The woman sighed, the little hope she had squashed quickly. So did I, and so did the rest of your family. When Caden said and did nothing more, Stella turned away. Have a nice evening, Beta Anderson. Leaving her father standing alone on the balcony, she walked back into the event hall. Luna Kylie had been standing by the side of the room for the last half an hour, fidgeting with her ornamental hairpin, and watching all the other attendees chatting, dancing, or just having a good time in general. She'd used the hairpin as a topic of conversation earlier. It was in the shape of a dragonfly and had rubies for eyes. A family heirloom, but no one bothered to approach her and ask about it now. Witnessing Olwen dancing with Alpha Landon, looking so relaxed and so happy sent an uncontrollable feeling of hatred and envy through her body. When the other had turned out to be Aaron's fated mate those years ago, Kylie had those same emotions. She was one of the strongest she-wolves of the pack. She deserved to be Aaron's mate and Luna of the Silver Arrow pack over some useless, weak Omega. So when Aaron and her began their affair, it wasn't enough. She had traveled to the Snowfang pack after finding Oliver to placate her wolf Kira, had been smitten badly, as would any other wolf by their fated. But the thought of Olwen becoming Luna back home continuously put Kylie through bouts of frustration. And so, knowing Aaron was reluctant to mark Olwen due to her Omega status, she'd suggested the arrangement of rejecting both their mates for each other, guaranteeing her position as the Luna instead. And to make things even better, Bradley had agreed to give the Luna position to her to the point where he was willing to kick Olwen from her own home. Despite the minor hiccup when Stella found out about the full story, Kylie thought her future in the Silver Arrow pack was secured. Alpha Aaron was her mate, she was the Luna, and her only competition was either wandering aimlessly in the wilds alone or dead. Ours didn't like her or Kira apparently, but that was more on Aaron for not being able to control his own wolf the way she could. On her end, Kira had slipped into a heartbroken state after Kylie went against her wishes and rejected Oliver, and Kylie had made use of this grief to convince Olwen and the rest of the pack that Oliver had rejected her. Even now, though Kira was more comfortable around Aaron and ours than ours was, it was only because Kylie had worn down her wolf with her stubbornness. But then things got worse. Even after Aaron yelled out Olwen's name, while they were intimate, Kylie was obliged to be with him physically now and again, because of her heat, and she had never thought she would feel more humiliated. Though the Alpha had insisted it was his wolf that had caused him to slip up, seeing the way Aaron stared at Olwen today made Kylie wonder if some part of the Alpha had actually loved Olwen after all. So now, Kylie Young was back at square one. She was Luna of the Silver Arrow pack, but Olwen was now also Luna of the Moon River pack, and with a handsome man as her mate. Kylie's red water boiled as she wondered just exactly how someone like Olwen had managed to mate with Alpha Landon. She'd considered flirting with him earlier to get a rise out of Aaron, but other than greeting her, Landon had practically ignored her and turned back to Olwen, as if she were the only she-wolf in the world. Even as they danced together, they looked like the perfect couple, attracting plenty of attention, but lost in their own little bubble. That was supposed to be her and Aaron, but after that conversation he had with Olwen, the Alpha had disappeared off somewhere claiming he needed to be alone, leaving her, his mate, by herself. Kylie felt her fist clench the fabric of her dress, as Alpha Landon and Olwen finished dancing and headed off the floor together, holding hands and smiling and laughing. The couple were walking in her direction, and Luna丨was prepared to throw a snide remark at Olwen when a hand snagged her wrist from behind. Kylie was briefly caught off guard and about to kick off her supposed attacker when the scent of driftwood reached her nose. "Aaron!" She gasped in surprise as the man in question pulled her down into a nearby corridor and pinned her against the wall. She briefly forgot all her grievances with her chosen mate upon seeing the darkened look in his eyes. "Kylie!" His lips were on hers in an instant, and Kylie moaned softly and kissed back, parting her mouth and giving him access. Aaron growled and began to move his own mouth more aggressively, taking one of her legs and hitching it around his hip. Kylie gasped in response and pulled him closer, their bodies pressed together. Yes, this was what Alpha Aaron should have been like all this while. No one else should have mattered to him more than her, and if not for his wolf their relationship would have been fine. In this moment, all Kylie wanted Aaron to do was to make her forget all of the unpleasant memories that had accumulated tonight. At that thought, one of Kylie's hands was sneaking down to Aaron's belt when a polite cough made the Alpha pull away from her. Lightly gasping for breath from how passionate that kiss had been, Kylie was about to ask her mate to keep going when she saw who had walked in to witness them. Alpha Aaron and Luna丨. Olwen, in that dazzling blue dress and with Landon's mark in full color on her neck, was staring at them with a rather disapproving expression. "I understand you two are mates, and that you can't bear to be apart from one another, but I would recommend that you refrain from engaging in such acts of intimacy so close to the main room," she stated matter-of-factly, gesturing to the other end of the corridor behind her. "If you must, at least head further away." Kylie seethed at how calm Olwen was about this, but the other Luna merely smiled back at both of them and walked away. She just had to interrupt her moment with Aaron, and she didn't even look upset that Luna丨was making out so shamelessly with her ex-mate. "Or of course she had to see us. Aaron, let's just go find a room." She turned back to Aaron, but the man wasn't looking at her, but rather at Olwen's retreating figure. Upon seeing the forlorn look in the Alpha's green eyes, it hit Kylie. Aaron had been trying to make Olwen jealous. The anger rising up at being taken for a fool by her mate once more, Luna丨shoved him away. "You're sick," she spat, dusting off her dress before walking off. Luna Olwen couldn't help the small smile on her face as she left the scene. She'd noticed what Aaron was up to the moment he saw her and Landon approach. He'd grabbed Kylie and pulled her into that corridor, hoping that he'd get some kind of envious reaction out of Olwen. The dismayed look on his face, when she hadn't responded the way he'd hoped, said it all. After first discovering he and Kylie's affair all those months ago, Olwen had been disappointed and betrayed, but now, she just felt pity. She couldn't believe this was supposed to be her original fated mate, even with the explanation the moon goddess had given her. Luna Olwen had just about made it to the far side of the room, near the kitchens, when a hand closed over her arm and lightly pulled her back around. She sighed when she recognized Aaron. "Alpha Aaron, for the final time, we have nothing more to." Her voice trailed off when she saw deep orange eyes. "Ours?" Olwen. Ours in Aaron's body rumbled, his expression relieved but sad. "I missed you and Opal." Olwen felt Opal whine within her, but it was now out of sympathy and sadness for Ars's current situation. She recognized Lark as her mate now, but she knew Ars had never agreed with what Aaron did. Still in control of his human's body, Ars dropped her arm, taking a step back to keep some respectable distance between them. "I am sorry for everything that happened. It was out of my control." He spoke, his voice sounding gruff but soft. "Had it been up to me, I would never have betrayed you both." "It's all right," Olwen replied softly, dipping her head. "Opal and I know you didn't do any of this. As much as I still consider you my mate." As hesitated, looking wistful before he exhaled with defeat. "I know you have someone else. I hope you're happy with Alpha Landon." "I am," Olwen responded, smiling sadly at her ex-mate's wolf. But you have the opportunity to be happy too. You have Kylie. Oz snarled angrily at the mention of the other she-wolf. I don't like Kylie. She's a terrible she-wolf and Luna, and me and Kira have no genuine connection. Olwen felt pity well up inside her for Aaron's wolf. It was probably tearing him up to be forced to spend time with a mate his human had chosen for them both, while the mate he wanted left and ended up with another. I know, but I don't want to see you suffer. She placed a hand briefly on Aaron's shoulder, making him look back up at her with a soft gaze. Just promise me one way or another that you'll find your own happiness. What's done is done. We were fated once, and perhaps a part of me will always care for you, but not in the same way as before. Oz looked down, keeping quiet for a while before he lifted those dark orange eyes back up to hers, his mouth curved into a small, bittersweet smile that almost broke Olwen's heart. I'll try, he said. He gave her one last, slow nod. Have a good evening, Olwen and Opal. You too, Oz. Olwen watched Oz slowly turn and walk away. This was probably the closest thing she would ever get to an apology from Aaron. It hadn't been necessary for Oz to speak with her since she already knew he had been drugged, but she appreciated it. Taking a deep breath, she decided to go and rejoin her mate, who had gone off to discuss something with a few other alphas while she'd gone to walk in on Aaron and Kylie. She had barely taken a few steps when Elise's voice broke through the mind link, sounding panicked. Luna, behind you. The next thing she knew when Olwen had turned around was that Elise, in her waiting uniform, was in between her and Kylie. Kylie's face was deeply flushed with anger and disbelief, moments before the other crumbled to the floor, her body convulsing. Everyone around gasped and screamed, the atmosphere broken as Olwen crouched down by Elise's side in shock and worry. Her eyes were partially open, changing from their usual green to salmon pink rapidly, her breathing shallow. Dr. Enzo. Come to the event hall, now. Olwen hurriedly mind-linked their pack doctor just as Alpha Landon came towards them and seized Kylie's wrist. The she-wolf now had her eyes wide in alarm and tried to struggle free from the Alpha, but to no avail. With everyone watching, Landon snatched something from her dominant hand, her hairpin, except the head of the dragonfly had popped open to reveal a spike, stained in a dark liquid. Luna Kylie Alpha Landon growled, his eyes burning into the she-wolf as she shrunk back. Did you just attempt to poison Luna Olwen? Chapter 28 Function disrupted. Luna Kylie, answer me. Alpha Landon spoke firmly, as Beta Elijah hurried over to help restrain the she-wolf. Did you attempt to poison Luna Olwen? Kylie didn't answer, staring at the Elise on the floor in stunned silence. Dr. Enzo arrived just as the struggling Omega had fallen unconscious. Oh, thank the goddess, she's still alive, he breathed, checking her pulse. I'll take her to the pack clinic. He carefully carried Elise up and hurried out of the event hall as quickly as he had appeared. As soon as he was gone, all eyes zipped back to Kylie. Aaron, who had managed to take back control from Oz, was by the side blinking disorientedly. Everything had happened quickly for him, and suddenly his chosen mate was being accused of attempting to murder another Luna. Kylie, just answer the question. Aaron said, approaching her. Did you try to poison Olwen? That wasn't poison. Kylie protested, finding her voice at last the moment Enzo and Elise were out of sight. It was just a small dose of concentrated wolfsbane. Wolfsbane? Landon demanded, his face stormy. His grip tightened on Kylie as he glanced at Olwen, making sure she was okay. Fortunately, his mate had not been scratched at all by Kylie's poisoned hairpin, but she stayed a distance away from the other she-wolf with a wary look. The other leaders were watching the commotion, but the moment they heard the word wolfsbane they murmured amongst themselves uneasily. It wouldn't have killed Luna Olwen, it would have just cut off her connection to her wolf for some time. Kylie muttered ruefully, her eyes dropping to the polished marble floor. Don't be dramatic. I didn't use that much. She is an omega, after all. Dramatic. Stella strode forward, her eyes blazing with anger. Taking away someone's wolf, even temporarily, is a severe blow. It's like losing a part of yourself, having half of your soul ripped away. I wasn't thinking, Kylie protested, suddenly sniffling. I saw Luna Allwyn talking with Alpha Aaron, and I assumed the worst since they were ex-mates. Her knees buckled and she collapsed on the ground, sobbing. I'm sorry, Luna Allwyn. It's fortunate that I missed. Allwyn couldn't help the inward rolling of eyes she was doing. Kylie was obviously trying to worm her way out of the situation, the same method she'd used before by spilling crocodile tears and a sob story. From the murmurs around her, not a lot of attendees were buying it. Before Allwyn could open her mouth, however, another burst of sobs came from her left. Kylie, face stained with tears, looked up in confusion as Stella collapsed on her knees as well, crying. But you didn't miss, you ended up injecting Elise with wolfsbane. She's my brother's dearest friend, someone tell me she's okay. Stella was genuinely worried about Elise, but at the same time seeing Kylie attempting to win sympathy points again got to the she-wolf this time. And there was no way she was going to let Kylie have the spotlight and attempt to make Allwyn look bad. Do you really think that just because you didn't reach your intended target, that I'll somehow go more easy on you? Landon snarled, his eyes flashing golden yellow. You just tried to cause harm to the Luna of another pack, and during the annual Evergreen function no less. The onlookers all glanced at Luna Kylie and nodded amongst themselves, muttering. It was an unspoken rule that the function was a time of peace, where the leaders of each pack could converse and form connections without a need for any violence. And that rule had remained unbroken for years until now. I suggest that Luna Allwyn conceive a fitting punishment for Luna Kylie. The voice that spoke up belonged to Alpha Silas, who was glowering at the Luna in question. After all, she was the one that Luna Kylie originally intended to inject with wolfsbane. Everyone turned to Allwyn, who was still standing in the same spot. Her heart was pounding, she had been so close to losing Opal even if for a momentary period of time. If Elise hadn't gotten in the way, even though Allwyn was all right, Elise definitely was not. At this, her gaze steeled and she fixated a stern glare at Kylie. Very well. She looked up at all of the leaders surrounding her, including a still rather disoriented Alpha Aaron, who seemed caught off guard by what was going on. I recommend that we administer twice the dosage of concentrated wolfsbane to Luna Kylie. What? The she-wolf's eyes were huge. You can't. I don't know how long my connection to Kira will be missing. You'll be fine. Allwyn replied stiffly. You did say your previous dose was merciful because I am an omega. So as a stronger she-wolf, your connection to Kira should be able to withstand twice that amount. She looked at her mate. Does that seem like a fitting punishment to you, Alpha Landon? I think it is suitable. Landon responded with a curt nod. Kylie swallowed, glancing at all the others in the room, silently pleading for someone, anyone, to speak up on her behalf. But none did. Instead, the alphas, lunas, betas and the like all collectively exchanged glances. Sounds fair. If she knows what it is like to lose one's wolf, maybe she wouldn't do it to others. Alpha Maxwell spoke with a snort. Kylie flushed angrily at his words, when she saw Aaron approaching her. Her eyes widened and she quickly tried to look as pitiful and as desperate as possible. Aaron, please do something, she begged him. I don't want to lose Kira. Alpha Aaron looked at her for a brief moment before turning to the others in the room. Do what you wish, he said, devoid of emotion before he headed further away from her without a second glance. Once Luna Kylie had been injected with twice the dosage of concentrated wolfsbane she had intended for Luna Allwyn, she was carried back to their temporary living quarters in the Moon River Pack, escorted by Alpha Landon's best guards. Keep a close eye on both her and her mate. Landon instructed his men via the mind link. Anything suspicious, report to me. Yes, Alpha. As the men led Alpha Aaron away, Luna丨in his arms as limp as a ragdoll, Landon turned back to Olwen. Are you okay? She nodded. I'm fine. I hope Elise is all right. We'll go and see her once this function is over. Landon assured her softly. Once Alpha Aaron and Luna丨had left the hall, the rest of the leaders had broken into heated discussion. What kind of Luna tries to harm another in open view of everyone else, let alone the annual function? Alpha Aaron made a terrible choice of mate. I heard that a third of their pack members didn't show up to her Luna ceremony. Now I know why. Luna Olwen, are you all right? Luna Vaughn and a few other women approached her with concern. Yes, the wolfbane didn't scratch me, fortunately. Please, come and sit down. You must be in shock after all that. As Olwen let the other Lunas guide her to a chair, surrounding and talking to her like concerned mothers, Alpha Landon headed to Alpha Maxwell, and a few others. I would like to formally apologize for the disruption to the pack's function. He spoke, bowing his head. We will have to look into better detection of hidden weapons and poisons such as Luna丨's. It's not an issue. Alpha Maxwell assured him, as the others nodded. But I believe everyone is partially relieved to have both of them out of the room. Admittedly, Alpha Bradley wasn't the most pleasant person to be around either, but at least he had the sense not to try and attack another leader during the event. Alpha Silas agreed. And with Alpha Aaron not doing a thing to rein in his mate, the thought of them representing the Evergreen Wilds packs is sickening. Noises of further agreement and support came up from around them. With all the rumors we've heard of what is happening within the Silver Arrow pack, it's difficult to say if they still deserve to be the group that leads every other. Alpha Clovis of the Ocean Gem pack said. And with leadership like what we just witnessed. Alpha Landon, you should consider challenging Alpha Aaron. Alpha Frederick spoke up, his eyes darting around to make sure that Aaron was nowhere close by to hear his suggestion. Landon raised an eyebrow, feigning surprise. Alpha Frederick, you are aware the last challenge that occurred was years ago, and that the Alpha of the Moon River pack was killed as a result. Yes, but this challenge could be necessary to save the Evergreen Wilds packs from further doom. Alpha Maxwell suggested, his expression solemn. I've been hearing of more and more rogues being sighted around the pack borders. If another attack happens, and the Silver Arrow pack is the first to fall, who knows what that will signal to the rest of our packs. I see. Landon knew this conversation would come sooner or later, but as he glanced at Olwen, who was still talking to the Lunas, his heart softened. I shall think about it. For now, given the temperament of his Luna, and what she just tried to do to my mate, we shall leave him be. Do not breathe a word of this to him. About an hour or so later, Beta Elijah and Stella assisted in helping to guide the guests to their temporary rooms as they stayed in the Moon River pack. After bidding good night to the attendees, Alpha Landon and Luna Olwen headed down to the pack clinic to visit Elise. Through the mind link, Dr. Enzo had informed them she was still unconscious, but he'd managed to remove most of the wolfsbane from her system. As such, her wolf was very weak, and she would need to be kept under observation in the clinic for a while. Olwen's heart broke as she entered the room and saw Elise lying in the bed. She had a number of tubes hooked up to her, and while the steady rising and falling of her chest indicated she was alive, her face was much paler than it had been before. Her right palm was covered in a plaster, but the darker veins that had appeared around it told Olwen that this was where Kylie's hairpin had pierced her. Elise was one of the catering staff. Alpha Landon murmured, looking upon the Omega with sympathy. She must have seen what was about to happen from the kitchens and got in the way. We can't thank you enough, Dr. Enzo. Olwen spoke as the man himself arrived through the door, checking on the monitor that Elise was hooked up to. If Elise had been left like that for any longer, she might have lost her wolf. I'm just doing my job as the pack doctor. Enzo responded, his eyes focused on the equipment. Olwen frowned slightly as she observed the doctor. He was normally calm and composed when it came to treating his patients, but today she could see the worry prevalent in his eyes and actions. "Are you okay? Elise is out of the dark, right?" "She is. But she's just—" Enzo stopped himself and shook his head, his gaze resting on the woman lying in bed with the tubes hooked into her veins. "Never mind. It's hard to explain." Luna Olwen watched Enzo for a moment more before she turned to her mate. "Landon, could you give me some time alone to speak with the doctor?" Alpha Landon looked a little confused, but as his eyes shifted to the man fretting over his patient, he seemed to understand, and he nodded before leaving the room. Once Landon was outside, Olwen stepped a little closer to Dr. Enzo. He didn't seem to notice her at all, his lips pressed together with a conflicted expression. "Elise is your mate, isn't she?" Enzo stiffened, turning back to face his Luna before he sighed softly and nodded. "When did you realize?" "Your Luna ceremony. I smelled her scent when everyone was gathered together, and when I saw her, my wolf reacted." "Does Elise know?" Enzo hesitated before he gazed back at the unconscious she-wolf. "I think she does. She looked back at me. But then nothing. She didn't approach me, and we just went about our day like nothing had happened. But my wolf keeps wanting me to be near her." Olwen briefly remembered Elise recounting her fear that her fated would reject her because of her history. "Did you know Elise before this?" Enzo shrugged. "Not closely. I always thought she was pretty, but I never really did anything because she seemed to have her sights set on Alpha Landon." He ran a hand through his hair. "After I came back, I wasn't sure how much she'd changed. I kept hearing about how she was flirting with various pack members, but I didn't think about it further because I was preoccupied with getting used to my new role as the pack doctor. As long as she wasn't a patient who showed up at the clinic needed medical attention, I didn't need to concern myself with what she did. But now when she wakes up, maybe you two can finally talk things out." Olwen suggested softly. "Maybe." Enzo stayed silent for a moment more. "Does Elise not want me as a mate? I'm no alpha or beta, I can't offer her much in terms of status." Olwen quickly lightly placed a hand on Enzo's shoulder. "Enzo, just give her time to get to know you. I haven't known Elise for very long, but I think she'll give you a chance as long as you do the same." She hesitated, her expression softening as she looked back at the girl in the bed before going on. "I think she's doing her best to change. But the decision as to whether you want to be her mate or not is yours." "I understand, Luna. I'll talk to her after she wakes up. But until then, I'll take good care of Elise. I'll leave you to it. But please do get some rest yourself, Dr. Enzo." "I will." Olwen turned to leave the room, but cast one final glance at Enzo as he sat by Elise's bedside with an apprehensive and yet tender look. While the rest of the leaders were able to begin their journeys home the day after, Alpha Aaron was forced to remain behind in the Moon River Pack for a few extra days. Luna Kylie was yet to regain consciousness after her punishment, and Alpha Landon and Luna Olwen didn't wish for there to be any fault with them if she were attacked on her trip back home in her state. If anything though, the whole pack had come to know of what Aaron and Kylie had done to Olwen beforehand, and news of Kylie's attempt to sabotage the Moon River Pack's Luna had spread quickly thanks to the staff at the function, not to mention the sight of Elise, pale and gaunt, being carried to the clinic by an anxious Dr. Enzo. So rather than an honored guest, Alpha Aaron may as well have been a criminal they were sheltering. People were civil to him, but not overly friendly or kind beyond what they needed to be. Beta Caden was staying in a nearby room, but he hadn't really come out since the function. Aaron supposed seeing his daughter had made things really awkward. He checked in occasionally on his chosen mate, but with her still out cold thanks to a mistake she committed, Aaron's mind was elsewhere. Luna Kylie could remain comatose for the rest of her days and Aaron might not have cared. He'd refused to accept it at first, but Kyla's attitude during the function had cemented the fact that she was more of a liability to the Silver Arrow Pack than he had ever believed. Olwen, on the other hand, from what he'd observed the night before and now, she was more than a competent Luna. She was caring towards all of her pack members and knew how to carry herself. And not to mention the memory of how stunning she'd looked in that dress in the function was ingrained in Aaron's head. He was surprised that Ars hadn't made him jump on Olwen right away, given how insistent his wolf had been on their ex-mate up until they arrived here. Ars had taken control of his body for a brief period the night of the function, but Aaron couldn't remember at all what happened. He recalled making out with Kylie to try and get a rise out of Olwen and being unsuccessful, and the next he was standing in the middle of the room, with Kylie having just attempted to poison the she-wolf. Not only was Ars not telling him a thing, but he wasn't making any effort to sabotage him like he usually did. Despite having to be in proximity with Kylie as she was carried to their room, his wolf did nothing while she was perfectly prone to another strangulation attempt. Not to mention the constant reminder of memories of Olwen had stopped too, but ironically, Ars didn't need to do so now. Luna Olwen of the Moon River Pack had shoved herself back into Alpha Aaron's head, and she was not leaving. Aaron knew that Olwen didn't want to be near him, and that Landon would probably break his neck if he uttered a word to her. So he stayed somewhere and watched her from a distance, as she went about her day. She went to the local school to read to the pups, dropped by the bakery to patronize Beta Elijah's parents, and then took care of other pack matters, all over the place, while still making time to train. "Aren't you going to say something about how I threw a gem away?" Aaron questioned Ars, who was being uncharacteristically silent despite Olwen's lavender and honey scent practically being everywhere. "No. You're saying that yourself, you don't need me to tell you anymore." Somehow, Ars not interfering with anything Aaron did was more alarming than him constantly doing so. Alpha Aaron hadn't seen Luna Olwen out on his second extra day in the pack, and ended up heading back to his and Kyla's temporary quarters. Kylie was still unconscious, and he glanced at her to make sure she was still alive before sitting on the couch in the living room. The wolfsbane had done its work far more quickly with twice the dose. Kylie suddenly looked like a malnourished version of herself, without the strength and vitality that Kira bestowed her with. Had he stayed with Olwen, he could have had a happy family, perhaps even an heir by now. No one in the Silver Arrow Pack would have questioned his rule, and heck, Stella wouldn't have left and destroyed his reputation in the process. When he'd seen Luna Olwen last night, his impulses would have made him drag her into the closest room, where she could spend the entire night underneath him. She had looked far more beautiful than he could have ever imagined, even compared to Kylie. All those emotions withered and died the moment he recalled he still had his chosen mate with him, and that the moment she woke up he would have to leave the Moon River Pack. How would the Silver Arrow Pack react to having a Luna without a proper connection to her wolf, even if it was only temporary? Aaron groaned and buried his head in his hands. Thank you for tuning in. If you enjoyed this episode of the story, please give it a like, and don't forget to subscribe to get notifications for updates.